Are these things evil? Are these things gonna bring demons into my house? Am I gonna become possessed? Am I gonna conjure the devil? Am I gonna bring evil through into this world? And the answer is no. And I'm gonna explain why. So as you've guessed by the title of this video, you can guess what this video is about. So I'm doing another video on the Ouija boards as I feel like I've got to explain a little bit more about this just because of everything which I've seen online recently, and I've been researching more history about the Ouija boards, some really interesting history, and just kind of want to do another in-depth look into the Ouija boards, but also using the help of the spirit box, which is just behind me, and the PSB7. We're going to be asking the spirits tonight what they think about Ouija boards. Are they actually evil? Am I going to conjure demons? Let's ask them. But anyway, going into a more in-depth look into these boards. Now, as I said in the first video, when it comes to the Ouija boards, if you want to learn more about the history of Ouija boards and you want to learn more about these things, then I'm going to leave a link in the description below about this video, which is floating just by the side of my head, which is a really good one on how the Ouija board like took America by storm, and explains a lot about what these were before they become like something in pop culture and in horror movies, and how they became so iconic in horror movies and such. Now, these were originally sold as a dating game for couples, and that was not what they were first billed as at first, but these things were made as a spirit communication tool. That's what they are today, and eventually they were sold as an excuse for kind of couples to play this game and get close together. They had to balance the board on their knees, and the couples put their hands together on the planchette, and they would use it as a dating game, and it was really popular in America, especially with couples. And these things didn't really come into much popularity in the paranormal side until movies like The Exorcist and such came out. Now, when it comes to those kind of films that feature things like the Ouija board, a lot of those films, I'm going to say a good 95% of those movies, campfire stories, stories that you've heard, books that you've read, are just not true. And I am speaking from my personal experience. We've been using these collectively for years. Never one single time had a negative experience, ever. All these are just like a PSB7, just like a spirit box, just like a pendulum, just like automatic writing, table tipping, apps, and so forth. This is just another communication tool. Now, as I break this down, all this is a piece of wood with some letters, some numbers, yes, no, and goodbye. That's all it is. And along with the planchette as well. And the planchette in French actually means little plank, or small plank, I think. I can't remember which, but I think it's a little plank. But anyway, with this just being a piece of wood, it's really quite simple when you break it down. It sounds a little bit ridiculous. Now, I hear people say all the time, oh Jack, you shouldn't touch that Ouija board, you shouldn't mess with Ouija boards, you're bringing demons into the house, you're going to become possessed, your head's going to spin around, and like dishes and like you're going to be flying around the house, like things are going to be thrown around your house, demons are going to try and kill you when you sleep, all this kind of stuff. And I can tell you absolutely none of that has happened. In fact, I've had nothing but positivity come out of these, because these things are painted in a really negative light, which I still don't understand. I will admit, when I was younger, I fell into that trap of watching the horror movies and all that kind of stuff where these things were featured, and I fell into that trap of fearing these things, which was quite silly, until I started using them myself and really dove in and realized, oh, this is actually, this isn't evil. What I was thinking was actually quite ridiculous. Now, people think, just because of what they see in movies, that you put the planchette on and this thing's going to go like this, and it's going to go all around the board, and it's going to spell out death, evil, the devil, all that kind of stuff. The thing is, 9.5% of the time, we don't get anything out of this board at all. And the reason why is because when you're using something like a board or a pendulum or table tipping, things like that, that takes spirits a lot of physical energy, and they got to use energy which they don't have anymore, because they don't have a physical body like what we do. Which means I have a physical body, which means I'm able to hold this board in my hands, whereas a spirit does not. So to take physical energy to move this is extremely difficult. Whereas when I use a PSB7, that's so much easier for them to use, because they can manipulate that audio in order to formulate their words, the responses, the sentences, to communicate back and forth with you. That's so much easier. But yeah, I never see anybody in our videos or any videos say, don't touch that spirit box, don't touch that pendulum, don't touch that app, don't touch that table, don't touch whatever. I never see that, but it's always don't touch that Ouija board. But I'm going to tell you that a PSB7, for example, will bring in way more spirits than this thing ever will. Most of the time, I don't get anything out of this board, because this is stupendously hard for spirits to use. It takes a lot of physical energy, it takes a lot of energy for a spirit to even move one of these things. It's really quite difficult. But whereas using a radio, so much more simple. Now, when me and Diana were talking about this, we thought, how can we present this in a different way, in a video or out in the public if we were doing like a social experiment? So I'm just going to do it on camera and see how I can put this out to you and see if I can simplify this. Now, let's just say hypothetically, let's just say for a minute that these things definitely are evil. Let's just say for a minute they are. Now, if this thing is going to bring in demons and it's going to conjure up the devil and it's going to bring evil spirits into my home and it's going to possess me and I'm going to turn into a murderer or whatever. Let's just say these things are possessed, right? This board's definitely possessed, right? Now, I have just a piece of paper, a plain piece of paper. Now, I'm going to draw the same thing on this piece of paper, but I'm going to speed it up for you, and I'm going to explain the next part of what I'm going to say about the Ouija board. Okay, so like I said, let's say hypothetically that these are possessed, that all Ouija boards are possessed by the devil or evil spirits or whatever you want to call them. Now, I've drawn a Ouija board on this piece of paper. Just a piece of paper. That's all this thing is. Now, does this mean just because I've drawn this on a piece of paper that it's automatically possessed? And you're most probably going to say no. So, if I said to people, would you use this as a communication tool for spirits? They're most likely saying no. But whereas if I drew this in front of them and they saw me do it and showed them the piece of paper, does this mean that this piece of paper is automatically possessed? No, it doesn't. So this piece of paper has no reason to bring in evil spirits, and it's probably not going to bring in any spirits at all. So when you kind of break it down like that, it makes the myths about the Ouija board sound really ridiculous. It makes the stories sound really stupid. Because I hate that I have to do this video again, but some people wanted to do a more heavy, in-depth explanation, so I'm giving it to you. So put that Ouija board down there and chuck that one away. Now, the conclusion about the Ouija boards is that, again, I've never had a single negative experience, never seen any proof that Ouija boards have ever hurt or killed anybody. And when people say, I used a Ouija board once and I got scratched, or like my head spun around or my eyes rolled in the back of my head and I was speaking in tongues or speaking in Latin or whatever, again, if you want to tell me that, cool, but that's still not proof. That is still not evidence. Just from word of mouth, that's still not proof. Like, I wanted to get into this like so many other people because originally I was a skeptic and I didn't believe in any of this stuff at all. But when I actually started to do these things myself and started to dive into this myself, I actually found that I could see the light, I could see the truth in doing this. And when I started using these things, I was like, oh, that's all it is. It's just a spirit communication tool, and that is it, nothing more. If anything, these are so much harder than a PSB7 or that box to use. So this little tool, which I swear by, this is what I find the spirits use to speak through the frequencies. It's an AM/FM radio which scans without muting. So when I've used this over this, a lot of the times when we use these at the same time, spirits will sometimes say what they are trying to spell, or they'll give letters, for example, if you ask. Again, that doesn't always happen, but when you do have that connection, you do have to have a certain connection with this. Otherwise, when you don't have that connection, communication is going to be so much harder for you, and that's just going to make things more difficult. So when you have that connection, when you build up that relationship, that trust, and that respect for the spirit side, because when I use this ouija board, when I use this PSB7, sorry about that, when I use this PSB7 or when I use this box, a lot of people have this image of spirits being like these godly, magical beings, but then again, breaking that down, spirits were people, just like us. They still are people, but they're just in a different form. They're in an immortal form, and they've transferred into spirit. So when I have, say, a negative message come through a PSB7 or an app or something like that, if I get a negative message come through any device and it says, "Jack, I hate you," or "I'm going to kill you," or "I'm going to hurt you," I'm not going to automatically assume that's a demon. And if it says "I'm the devil," I'm not going to automatically assume that's the devil. And I'm not going to fear that. When I get negative messages, I don't fear them. Because you can't have fear when you do this. If you have fear when you do this, don't even bother getting into this, because it's going to drive you insane. But when I get a negative message come through, which I have a few times, like I said, I'm not going to assume it's a negative demon or devil, because that could just be a spirit who was a bad person in their real life. Like in real life, there's good people and there's bad people. You know, there's funny people, there's miserable people. You know, there's light, there's dark, you know, and it's just that simple. There's good people that in the world, and there's bad people. So if I get a bad message, that could just be a person who is just a miserable person and just wants to spread negativity. So it's just really the same as it is in life. But anyway, going back to the Ouija boards, are they a really useful tool for spirit communication? Yes, they are. Will you get guaranteed results every single time you use one? No. We have used these countless numbers of times, and a good maybe 9.5 out of 10 times, we don't get any movement from this at all. A lot of the time, this does not move. So we have much better luck when using devices such as scanning radio. Now, when you use a scanning radio such as this PSB7, it has gave us so much clear evidence for this field. And this is something which, another video which I want to put out to you to really help try and educate people out there who are curious about what me and so many others do, and really just kind of bust those myths and kind of break down those walls of the things which are just simply not true. Like the Ouija boards, like I said, from what you've seen in movies when it says based on a true story, again, there's no evidence to say it is based on a true story. And when you listen to campfire stories and when you listen to word of mouth, those still aren't facts. Okay, so if anybody is still in a bit of doubt and says, and just says, "Jack, you don't know what you're talking about," and again, I'm not saying everything that I say is fact. This is only from my opinion and this is only from my experience. But if you're gonna say that those things definitely are evil, Ouija boards are evil, and you should never play with them because they've killed people, they've hurt people. I've seen zero evidence that these boards have ever hurt or killed a single soul. And if you say otherwise, send me proof. Send me real documented evidence. Send me hardcore proof and evidence that these things hurt and kill people, because I have seen nothing. All they are is a helpful spirit communication tool, and I've had nothing but positivity from them. So I hope I've cleared this up finally, and now, instead of me rambling on, I'm now going to switch on the PSB7, switch on the box, and ask the spirits what they think about the boards. Are they helpful? Do they like using them? And what's their opinion on them? Can you hear me? I can hear you. Hi. Who is this? How many spirits are taking part in this session with me tonight? We are. How many of you is there? What is this? I thought I had a board. It is a board. It's called a ouija board. Yeah. This board in front of me, is it very difficult for you guys to use physical energy to move something? Is using physical energy hard? Hard. Does it take a lot of energy to move something? To push the planchette on the Ouija board, for example, do you find that very difficult? Do you need to use our energy to do that? It's always hard. So is using like a scanning radio much easier? Can any of you give me a name, please? My name is Jack, in case you don't know me. Help? Are you okay? What do you need help with? I'll help you any way I can. Can I ask you something? Are these boards evil? Do you like this box? Do you prefer the box more than the board? That thing? This thing? Is this easier to communicate with me with? It's like a telephone. Is it like a telephone to you guys? It's on, yeah. Why do you prefer this? Why do you prefer using the PSB7 rather than a board?